Hi everybody, this is Blake Highstrader, and the following is a mini rant I did on the Twilight series from an unaired pilot episode of the podcast that I'm trying to produce. I hope you guys enjoy, and please stick around to the end for a special little message. Twilight spends a lot of time inside Bella's head, and there's only so much you can do with that to not make a movie awful. Because if we spent 100% of all 5 of those fucking movies stuck inside Bella's head, it would not have made it to 5 movies. It probably wouldn't have even made it. It shouldn't have made it to 4 books, but we'll get. Actually, that's a really interesting point. Stephenie Meyer never wanted to write New Moon and Eclipse. That was never her intention. She wanted to write Twilight and then write Forever Dawn. And they were like, no, we should stretch this out. And so she created these 2 middle books that talked about the essence of like humanity and all these choices that Bella would actually have to make, but that was never Stephenie Meyer's original intention. So it all got scrapped for Breaking Dawn. And if she hadn't been so hell-bent on just those 2 books, Twilight would have been a much more interesting story, because with New Moon, with Edward leaving and her talking to Jacob and talking to the werewolf and just learning all this stuff and all these choices about humanity and like not really like your soul, but your soul, and like opened up all these new interesting directions it could have taken. Even if Bella had still chosen to get with Edward, to marry him, to become a vampire, it would have been much more interesting if she had still had that dilemma that got brought up in New Moon and Eclipse. But that was never the original intention, and that's why Breaking Dawn feels so out of place as a book and as a movie, because it was never supposed to follow up that heavy of a story. The vampire mythology, because the vampire mythology is always followed, it's always followed the story of, your soul and, human sacrifice and like, da 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 da, like we see with the Volturi at the end of book 2, they have zero to no regard for human life. And that's very traditional of vampires, and that's why people were so excited about Twilight, because Edward and Carlisle and the Cullens and the Denali, they had this such a high regard for human life. And Carlisle even goes to the point of, he views humans like as these pure beings that are capable of negative things but still like worthy of life. And he's so old, and usually that's around Carlisle's age, 300 to 400, that's usually where vampires in mythology lose that like semblance of humanity, and Carlisle never lost it. And that's why people were so excited for Twilight, was because it was a new take, and we could overlook the sparkling, and we could overlook Edward's, eternal 17-year-old mind, to get a glimpse at this brand new world where traditional vampires still existed, like the Volturi, like the Romanians, like the Egyptians, shit like that still happens, but there's still vampires out there that believe, and vampires that can be turned, like Laurent was persuaded by the Denali to be good, and, ultimately Victoria, whatever. And, or, like, Garrett had spent years and years and years, being a vampire and doing whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, all the time, meets Kate and can immediately be persuaded to try and understand this compassion and this humanity. Even the Denali sisters, Kate, Irina, and Tanya, were the original setting for the succubus myth. They seduced and killed men for fun, and they were still able to be turned. And like, when you break it down, that's what makes Twilight interesting, and that's why I like it. I don't care about Edward and Bella and Jacob. I don't. I care about all this background that she set up and then ignored. Alright, thank you guys so much for listening. It really means a lot. Linked below will be my Ko-Fi and my Patreon account. I'm really hoping to bring people in and get better equipment to record this podcast series talking about different media types and different franchises and how they interact and how they're different from each other and everything like that, and just kind of analyzing different things like that. I'm also in need of a co-captain to this entire thing. I completely forgot the word I was going to use, a co-personality, I guess, for this whole thing. So if you are interested in doing any kind of discussion series like this, please contact me. I'll have my email also down here. this is spreading through word of mouth and through donations and support. So please, even if you can't help, I would appreciate it if you would really just get the information out there, because this is the kind of stuff that will be posted under my Patreon and other stuff like that, and also like my art commissions and everything like that. So I would really appreciate it if you guys could help me out and help me get this going, and anything you can do for me would be a tremendous help. I really appreciate everything you're doing and just by sharing this. So thank you so much, guys.